My name is Eleanor Reed, and I've always been the kind of person who lets her work speak louder than her title. I'm not flashy, I'm not loud, but I build things that matter. For the past 17 years, I was the lead systems architect at NovaGrid Solutions, a renewable energy firm in Austin that started as a small startup and grew into a national powerhouse. And when I say I built things, I mean the bones of the company, the code, the data vaults, the internal security infrastructure, the real-time energy grids that powered thousands of homes in the Southwest. That was me. I was there before the name NovaGrid even made it onto the building. Back when the servers lived in a closet next to the kitchen and we had to manually reboot the whole system every time there was a Texas thunderstorm. I watched that company grow from wires and whiteboards to million-dollar contracts and investor calls. Thomas Delaney, the founder, was old school. A mechanical engineer with a quiet sense of vision and a deep respect for people who showed up, did the work, and didn't ask for applause. He wasn't a tech guy, but he understood what it meant to build trust. So when he asked me to take over the systems division full-time, I didn't hesitate. What most people didn't know was that behind closed doors, Thomas made sure I was protected. We drafted a clause, buried deep in my executive contract, giving me full authority over system governance in case of a breach or an unjustified termination. It was legal, binding, and it only kicked in if the company ever forgot who made it run. And of course, no one ever thought it would be used. I didn't wear a badge that said indispensable. I didn't need to. I trained every single IT hire, reviewed every system patch, and quietly covered the holes that others left behind. I wasn't on billboards. I wasn't at the launch parties. But the moment a server blinked, they called my name. I never asked for praise. I asked for integrity. What I got, in the end, was betrayal. And it all started the moment Thomas retired and handed the keys. Not to someone who earned it, but to someone who shared his last name. Valerie Delaney made her entrance, like she was stepping onto a TED Talk stage, not into the corner office of a multi-million-dollar energy firm. She was all crisp white blazer, perfectly curled hair, and that look in her eyes like she already knew more than everyone else in the room. She was 29, fresh off a 3-year stint at some flashy AI startup in Berlin that burned twice, as bright and crashed half as fast. And yet, just 6 weeks after Thomas officially stepped down for health reasons, she strutted in with a new job title, CEO of NovaGrid Solutions. There was no press release, no internal email blast. Just a Monday morning meeting where the board announced, NovaGrid will now be led by the next generation. A polite round of applause followed. I didn't clap. Valerie didn't waste time making her intentions clear. She wasn't here to honor legacy. She was here to disrupt, as she put it, her favorite word, which she used like a weapon. First came the vision decks full of buzzwords: blockchain-optimized scalability, quantum resilience, AI-first frameworks. I asked a simple question in one of the meetings: and where exactly does this plug into our current grid infrastructure? She blinked, clearly annoyed, then smirked and said, "That's why we need new infrastructure." That was the first time I realized she didn't just want to rebrand the company. She wanted to burn it down and rebuild it in her own name. And in her mind, that meant pushing out anyone who reminded people of the foundation she hadn't laid herself. I became a target almost immediately. Valerie referred to me as legacy personnel during executive updates, code for old and in the way. She'd invite the junior IT team to strategy meetings, intentionally leave me off emails, then claim it was a mistake. She started questioning decisions I'd made years ago that had kept the company running smoothly through 2 mergers and a cyber attack. It was never direct. It was slow, intentional erosion. Death by 1,000 slights. One afternoon, she walked into the server room while I was rerouting an internal backup and said, loud enough for 2 interns to hear, "It's wild we're still doing this manually. Feels like a museum down here." She didn't know the half of it. That museum was why Novagrid's power nodes didn't get hacked last year when another provider got shut down for 48 hours. That manual rerouting was the reason we never lost a single government contract due to a system failure. But none of it mattered to Valerie. In her eyes, I was a relic. She wanted shiny dashboards and predictive AI models, regardless of whether they actually worked in the field. She wanted speed over stability, branding over backbone. And the more I stayed calm and did my job, the more it seemed to irritate her. To her, I wasn't just someone in the way. I was a symbol of a past she wanted erased. But what she didn't understand, what she never even bothered to ask, was that every system she was trying to replace had my fingerprints all over it. She didn't realize that in trying to cut me out, she was cutting into the very nerves of the company. And by the time she figured that out, it would already be too late. It happened on a Thursday. You know the kind. The sky was too bright for how cold the air felt, like even the weather knew something was off. We all got a calendar invite around 9 a.m. Mandatory all hands, 10:30 sharp. No agenda, no context, just the kind of vague corporate summons that makes the whole floor go quiet. When we filed into the conference room, Valerie was already standing at the front, her arms crossed, a screen behind her displaying some sleek slideshow titled Phase 1, Strategic Realignment. That should have been my first warning. She launched into her speech like she was reading from a leadership blog, talked about efficiency pivots, lean restructuring, and how today's tech world requires agility, not sentimentality. Then she said it. Some departments and some individuals no longer align with the direction Novagrid is heading. The words floated in the air for a moment, followed by a calculated pause. Every eye slowly shifted to me. She didn't say, "My name, not yet." She didn't have to. A few hours later, I got the calendar ping. 1:00 p.m., Valerie Delaney, CEO, Conference Room B. No assistant, no HR rep, just me and her. I walked in exactly on time, sat down across from her, and waited. She didn't offer a seat. She didn't even look up at first, just kept typing like I was an interruption to her afternoon coffee. Finally, she closed her laptop with a theatrical little click, leaned back, and gave me this smug, rehearsed smile. "Eleanor," she started, "you've had an impressive run here. 17 years. That's admirable." I didn't respond. I wasn't going to make it easier for her. "But moving forward," she continued, "we need talent that can scale, adapt, and think in real time. We're sunsetting certain roles that no longer serve the company's future." She said it like she was cutting a subscription, not a person. "I assume this is about cost?" I asked, voice flat. "It's about value," she said, the word curling in her mouth like it tasted expensive. "And frankly, maintaining a position solely for legacy knowledge isn't sustainable. We need people who build, not babysit." That was the slap. Babysit, like the systems I'd kept alive through blackouts and cyber threats were toddlers needing a nap. "You'll be escorted out after this," she added, like we were wrapping up a lunch meeting. "No severance per the new efficiency policy. HR will mail your exit paperwork." I stood slowly, adjusted my bag, and looked her straight in the eye. "You should check the contract I signed with your father," I said, calm as glass. "Specifically page 9, clause 14. Her brow creased slightly, just for a second, but I saw it, that flicker of doubt. Then I turned and walked out. No raised voice, no tears, no begging. She wanted me gone so badly. Fine. But she had no idea what she'd just triggered. I got home around 2:15 that afternoon. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't pour a glass of wine and rage text an old coworker. Instead, I took off my jacket, fed my cat, and sat down at my home office desk like I was clocking in for another regular day. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second longer than usual. And then I logged in. What Valerie hadn't realized, because she never asked, never read, never respected the work behind the curtain, was that in her haste to erase me, she forgot to revoke my access. My admin credentials were still live. Every single back-end system, every server node, every live operations dashboard, they were all still tied to me. Rookie mistake. Fatal mistake. I opened the Nova Grid Core Systems terminal, the same one I'd helped write line by line. Tucked away in the emergency governance section, under my unique login, was a protocol few people even knew existed. Tier 3 system lockdown. Unilateral execution rights. It was the clause Thomas and I had drafted 6 years ago when the company hit its first major expansion. We agreed, if I were ever terminated without just cause or severance, I had full authority to suspend and lock all systems under my purview until a formal review was conducted. Valerie never saw it coming. She didn't even bother to look. I typed in the command, confirmed my credentials, launched the protocol. Within 5 minutes, Nova Grid's internal dashboard began blinking red. The CRM interface froze. The cloud-based control system for the solar array nodes switched to standby mode. Customer access to usage data went offline. Vendor portals locked up. The real-time grid load balancer? Frozen. Even the company's Slack channels, integrated into our custom server relay, went completely dark. Nothing was deleted. That would have been illegal. But locked? Oh, everything was airtight. And per the clause, I was fully within my rights to do so. It took less than an hour. I sat back, watching lines of code reflect across my screen, and thought about how ironic it was. How someone so obsessed with the future could be undone by a contract written in the past. By 3:20, my phone started buzzing. A text from Mark in systems. Hey, did something go wrong with the central hub? Valerie's freaking out. Then another from the head of procurement. Can't access order logs. All systems are acting like they don't recognize user credentials? I didn't respond. Not yet. Valerie thought she'd deleted me from the company like clearing out a forgotten file. She didn't know I was the system. And now she was about to learn what happens when you cut the power and forget who holds the switch. By Friday morning, Nova Grid was bleeding out. The company that once prided itself on being future-proof had gone radio silent. Client dashboards were still down. The solar farm in Nevada couldn't sync with the power grid. The wind facility upstate reported manual override failures. One of our biggest government clients canceled a $12 million contract before noon. Valerie had tried everything: panic emails, desperate calls to our third-party vendors, even dragging in a freelance IT firm from LA that promised a miracle in 72 hours. Spoiler, they got locked out within 10 minutes. I stayed quiet. I didn't taunt. I didn't post cryptic tweets. I just watched from my home office while sipping tea and updating my freelance client system, which, ironically, still ran smoother than Nova Grid's million-dollar infrastructure. Then, at 4:37 p.m., I got the call. Unknown number, but the voice on the other end was unmistakably polished. Miss Reed, this is Charlotte Lang from the Board of Directors. We'd like a word. Her tone was stiff but controlled, like someone used to managing crises with a velvet-gloved fist. Certainly, I said, already powering up my webcam. We'd like to hold a virtual hearing in 1 hour. Are you available? I smiled. I wouldn't miss it. When I joined the call, the screen filled with suited board members sitting in front of sleek backgrounds. But front and center, looking like a cracked porcelain doll, was Valerie. Gone were the smug smiles and crisp blazers. Her hair was disheveled, her expression hollow. She looked like someone who had finally realized the train she was driving had no brakes. Miss Reed, Charlotte began, it's been brought to our attention that you were terminated earlier this week under questionable conditions, and that This action has directly led to the current system disruption. I nodded once. Correct. And you were the architect behind our entire digital infrastructure? For 17 years, yes, I replied, voice calm. Every system, currently non-functional, was designed, maintained, and safeguarded by me. And you executed a lockdown protocol? Also correct. It was a legal clause included in my contract, signed by Thomas Delaney, your former CEO and founder. There was a pause, eyebrows raised. A man in the far corner whispered something off-screen. Charlotte leaned forward. Can you clarify? The conditions that triggered this clause? I didn't blink. Termination without cause or severance. Valerie dismissed me without reason, stated on record that I was a legacy liability, and offered no compensation. That activated Clause 14 of the Emergency Governance Agreement. A few board members turned to Valerie. She said nothing. Her lips parted slightly, but the words never arrived. And the systems? Are they permanently damaged? Someone asked. No, everything is intact. Nothing was deleted. Access has been restricted until a formal resolution is reached, as per contract. Charlotte exhaled slowly. Understood. Thank you, Miss Reed. Please remain available for further discussion. We will be in touch shortly. I nodded and logged off, knowing full well what was coming next. Valerie thought she could delete people like outdated files, but now she was the one about to be dragged to the recycle bin. It was nearly dusk when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in over a year, Thomas Delaney. I stared at the screen for a moment, debating whether to let it go to voicemail. After everything, part of me didn't want to hear another apology that came too late. But curiosity won out. I answered, Eleanor? His voice was slower than I remembered, raspy, like he'd aged a decade in just a few months. I owe you more than a phone call, but I didn't want to wait any longer. I didn't respond right away. The silence, stretched, heavy with everything that had gone unsaid since he'd stepped down and handed the company to his daughter. I've been sick, he continued, but not blind. I heard what happened. Charlotte filled me in and I read the transcripts. I read the contract we signed. You should have read your daughter's agenda, I said, sharper than I intended. I know, he replied, voice flat with regret. And I'm sorry. I trusted her to lead, not to destroy. There was another pause. Then, will you meet me? No board? No Valerie? Just us. We met the next afternoon at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Austin. Thomas looked older, but his eyes were still sharp. He sipped tea with a trembling hand while I sat across from him, arms crossed, waiting. You were the backbone, he said softly. Of everything. And she tried to cut you out like a bad line of code. That's on me. She didn't just try, I said. She succeeded. Temporarily. He nodded, then slid a folder across the table. I know you don't want to come back under her. That's not what this is. Valerie's stepping down. Effective immediately. The board voted. Last night, I blinked. Does she know? She does now, he said simply. She's not handling it well. But that's no longer my concern. My concern is whether you'd be willing to help us fix this. I opened the folder. Inside, a proposal. Not for reinstatement. Not even for an executive title. It was bigger than that. Co-executive authority, equity, a leadership role in rebuilding Nova Grid from the ground up. Or an option to take the core IP and launch a new venture with Thomas as silent partner. You'd trust me with that? I asked. He looked me dead in the eye. I always did. I just forgot to act like it. For the first time in weeks, I let the idea settle. Being in control. Not out of revenge, but because I'd earned it. Because I'd built it. Because I had the scars to prove it. I'll consider it, I said, slipping the folder into my bag. Take your time, he replied. Just know, This time, you choose what comes next. The board meeting was quiet, tense, and for once, completely in my control. I logged in from home, hair tied back, blazer pressed, same expressionless face I wore the day Valerie fired me. But this time, I wasn't the one being dismissed. I was the one setting the terms. Charlotte opened the call. "Miss Reed, are you prepared to restore system access?" I nodded. Yes, but on one condition. Valerie wasn't present. She'd officially stepped down, citing personal health and misaligned vision. No one bought it. My team, I said clearly. The engineers who've spent the last 3 days cleaning up this mess, they get back pay. And moving forward, full-time status, raises, and their names officially recognized in the system documentation. No more being invisible. There was a pause. Then Charlotte, to her credit, nodded without hesitation. Approved. I typed a few commands, hit execute, and just like that, Nova Grid came back to life. Systems rebooted. Servers synced. Client. Dashboards lit up. By the end of the day, contracts were being re-signed. The company breathed again. But me? I didn't stay. A week later, I turned in my final report and handed over transition documentation. I declined every offer they threw my way: Chief Strategy Officer, CTO, even co-president. No title could undo what had been done. I wasn't there to reclaim a throne. I was there to draw the line. 3 months later, I opened the doors to Reed Tech Systems, a consulting firm that didn't care how shiny your resume looked. Only what you could build. My first hires were 2 of my former junior engineers. I mentored them like no one ever mentored me. I taught them about infrastructure, about writing airtight contracts, about never giving away your power in silence. At the end of our first training cohort, a young woman asked me what I wished someone had told me when I started. I didn't pause. I just said, "Your worth doesn't come from being seen. It comes from what you leave behind." And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't exhausted. I was free. If Eleanor's story reminded you of someone, maybe yourself, a former coworker, or anyone who's ever been underestimated just because they weren't loud, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story, and drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were Eleanor? Have you ever been dismissed or overlooked just for staying quiet? Every story is a voice. And your voice, no matter how quiet, deserves to be heard.